Just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a show here. This is my hometown, Harrison Hot Springs, and they still have all the Christmas lights on, which is kind of cool. Obviously, it's not Christmas anymore, but yeah, I figured I'd drive it around a bit here because it was in the garage. Yeah, I guess it had sat in the garage just long enough to warm up, so I just needed to drive around a bit and get the temperature readout on the instrument cluster to be a little bit more realistic, more accurate. So it's now showing, this is after driving for a few minutes, it's now showing minus 11. And you can see it is quite windy out. But yeah, what a beautiful display here. Check this out, we got a big moose. Obviously, being in Canada. Frosty the Snowman is moving around a little bit in the wind there. Alright, keep driving around for a bit. Thought I'd actually come down to the boat launch here, have a quick peek, and check it out. The water is all iced over. I don't know if you can see that. I'm sure you can, but check that out. Wow. I didn't realize the lake was frozen here. I don't know if you can hear the wind. Look at this tree here, you can see. All right, I think I've proved that it is cold. The car is now showing minus 11. And hell of a wind chill, of course. All right, so it seems to really depend on who you ask. I would say this, the temperature is somewhere between minus 12 at the highest to the minus 21 at the lowest, according to the weather.com. The car is currently reporting minus 12, but that just could be because areas around the temperature sensor are heat soaked, slightly warm soaked. As you can see, if I flip around here, this is BlueLink currently telling us that the temperature is minus 15, so it's kind of all over the place, but it's in the mid, negative teens. But in any case, I think we should go ahead. I'm going to shut it off, and then we'll turn it back on to get a fresh start here as far as a time for how long it's been running, and how many percentage points the system is using. So let me flip this around and show you what I'm talking about. So if I go into the EV screen here, and then under the menu, I can go to energy information, and then electricity use. So you can see here that because I just started the car up, it's most of the energy so far has been used by climate control and electronics. It's currently set to 22 degrees in here. I've got it on level 1 automatic, which is actually enough. It's plenty warm in here. And currently we have 169 kilometers of range, and we're at 62%. So keep in mind the mileage that it says doesn't actually matter as much as the battery percentage, because I know roughly how far I can go on 100% battery in this type of temperature. It's about 330 kilometers roughly. So this vehicle normally has 434 kilometers of range. When it's temperatures like this, I can usually eke out about 330 kilometers because obviously you lose a lot due to battery inefficiencies as they're colder. And your climate control is working a little harder and stuff, but it's actually not working as hard as one would think, and that's the purpose of this video. I actually drive with a pretty heavy foot, and I'm in sport mode most of the time, so I don't get the best efficiency, but I don't care because I'm not driving, hundreds of kilometers every single day. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this sit. It's going to show that the climate control and the electronics are using pretty much all the power, and the drivetrain is using nothing because we're not actually moving. There might be some battery care coming up just because it is so cold outside. I'd be curious to see what happens there. And as far as the battery percentage, hopefully we'll be able to see that in the camera angle because it's all the way in the bottom left corner. But it's at 62% now. It's 8:41. I'm going to let this run for 2 hours, so I'm going to come back at 10:40. I'm going to darken everything in here as well. Hopefully my neighbors don't wonder what the heck is going on. I'm going to turn off all the interior lights other than the screens. I just don't want somebody coming and knocking on my door going, there's something on in your car, it's dying. All right, I think this is a fair place to put it. We've got the climate control set to 22 degrees on both sides. And you can see the climate system is currently pulling in 1.84 kilowatts of energy. Electronics are using 0.31. I'm going to turn the lights off here. So we have just a little bit of energy going to electronics and a couple of kilowatts of energy going to the climate control system. I really wish it showed the battery percentage up on this screen, but it doesn't, unfortunately. Yeah, and you can't see the... You know what? It doesn't really matter, because when I come back at 1040, I'll just show you on the camera what the battery percentage was at. So if you remember, it was at 62%. It's now currently at 61%. 168 kilometers of range. So I will be back in 2 hours. Oh God, it's cold out here. All right. Hello. Lights. Okay. All right. Brr! It's cold out. All right. So I'm going to show you the current temperature and the current range and the current percentage. Check this out. All right. Without stopping the camera here, let's zoom in. So you can see we are now at 55%. So we dropped 7% in 2 hours. And we're at minus 14 degrees. As I mentioned, it is quite cold. So the car was a little bit heat soaked earlier. And we've got a range of 145 kilometers. I love this. Since the last recharge, 42.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Obviously, that's inaccurate because we haven't been moving. But yeah, so looking at this here, so the climate control, currently it is actively heating. So that's why it's using 2.4 kilowatts. And interestingly, it's used 88% of the energy and 44% of the, or sorry, 12% of the energy has been used for the electronics. So obviously those two combined to 100% and the drivetrain 0 because we haven't actually moved. So in 2 hours, we've dropped 7%. So what does that mean? So, I mean, at minus 14 degrees Celsius, you know, between minus 12 to minus 14, somewhere in that neighborhood of minus 14 degrees Celsius, 2 hours only took 7% of the battery. I mean, it just went to 54, so let's call it 8%, just to be on the safe side. So, I mean, if you're stuck in traffic for, you know, 4 hours, stuck in freezing temperatures, then maybe you lose 16%. It's really not that bad. I mean, all right, it's decided to redo the rest of the recording again, just so you're not looking at my face. Anyway, so With this vehicle, based on the consumption that it was getting, about 3 kilowatts, if you consider the HVAC system and the electronics together, and a 77.4 kilowatt battery, from fully charged to fully dead, if I were doing this test, it would last about 25 hours. Now, that's pretty darn good considering that the temperature, was definitely in the mid-teens, below 0 Celsius. Compare that to a gasoline vehicle, it's going to be somewhere around 20 hours. But it really depends on the gasoline vehicle. Some are going to be better, some are going to be worse. So it's pretty darn close to the same. Now, keep in mind, I could have stretched that time out had I reduced the heat. It was at 22 degrees Celsius, but you could very easily survive at like 12, 13 degrees Celsius if you got, a reasonable amount of warm clothing on. So with a gasoline vehicle, when it's idling, it's idling. I mean, you can't adjust how much fuel you burn based on your internal temperature of the car, like the cabin temperature. With an electric car, you definitely can. So I'm sure I could take that 25 hours and stretch it out to 35 hours if necessary. And of course, it's going to depend on just how cold it is as well. If it wasn't minus 14, let's say it was only minus 5, well, that's going to make another massive, massive change. What I usually see for consumption at about minus 5 or anywhere between freezing to minus 5 is a consumption of more like 1 to 1.5 kilowatts of energy. So this was really, really pushing it. Another thing I want to point out is that it was very, very windy out as well. When you combine very cold temperatures and wind, not only is that battery sitting there getting cold, but any heat that it generates is quickly being whisked away by the wind. So that doesn't help either. So this really was, I wouldn't say the worst case scenario, but it was a pretty bad case scenario, especially for where we live in southern Canada here. And then that also goes to that's another thing I want to mention, is that most people aren't living in Arctic climates. Okay, so with EVs, most people aren't going to be dealing with extremely cold temperatures like this. In Canada, in some places, 100% they do, but how often are you getting stuck in traffic jams for that long? So, and then if you are, does it really make a difference if you have a gas car or not? I think I would rather be in an electric car in this situation, especially if it was like piling up with snow, because that's another thing you need to worry about with a gas vehicle, is you have to worry about your exhaust pipe, basically the exit, make sure it's not covered in snow or whatever, because you have to worry about carbon monoxide poisoning, that sort of thing. Electric vehicle, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So I think I prefer an electric vehicle in this case, and I do, and I have, and that's why I own one, obviously. So I'm going to be biased, but I think I ran the numbers safely enough to say that this particular myth is 100% busted. If you have somebody saying, what are you going to do if you get stuck in a traffic jam for 2, 3, 4, or 5 hours? Your response is going to be, I'm just going to calmly sit there and wait for it and keep the heat on. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you have any suggestions for future videos, or if there's something about an EV that you would like to see. Thanks again. Have a great day.